So these are Spring Beauties, in particular Virginia Spring Beauties, Claytonia virginica, named after John Clayton, one of the first Virginia naturalists, by Linnaeus himself. You have two Claytonias which are native to Virginia. This is the only one we have locally, Claytonia virginica. There is a Claytonia Carolina, but it's found west of the mountains. This is a beautiful spring ephemeral, and in good places it can actually spread quite a bit and just carpet the ground. It's kind of hard to realize just how important this wildflower is. But it's a spring ephemeral. It comes up and sends up its leaves only after it's warmed up in the springtime, but before the trees leaf out. It's ephemeral in that after the trees leaf out, it can't get enough energy. The leaves die back, and you have a bare patch, but only in so far that the energy is being stored in a little tuber, a little potato-like growth underneath. This is a wonderful plant, and even though each individual flower only is open for a week, the species can be in bloom for several months, from February all the way into May. And so more different species of pollinators have been recorded on Spring Beauties than any other spring ephemeral has been studied in our region. So these are pretty valuable plants. Now, not only that, but there's actually a species of Andrena bee, a little solitary bee, which needs the pollen in order to reproduce. Even though it'll actually, the bee can go to different plants to get nectar, if it doesn't visit a member of this family, the Portulaceae family, which means mostly Spring Beauties in our area, it cannot get the right pollen and can't feed its young. So without this plant, that little bee can't survive. So a neat little plant. Again, more visitor pollinators than anything else around here. And it's got these nectar guides. Kind of hard to see in this one. I wish I had one that was a little bit better open. Maybe you can see it in here. It's not focusing real well. But it's got these nectar guides. You'll see that the flowers are variable, and these lines inside. So those insects that can see in the ultraviolet spectrum, these basically are little flags that point to where the nectar is. You'll see some of these, since it's starting to be the afternoon, are already starting to close up. The plant, in order to protect its valuable pollen and nectar stores, close up and point downwards when it gets dark, if it's going to rain, or if it's too cold. And then it just sits there with those closed until the next day, when it'll open them up again and point up towards the sun so that the pollinators can visit it. The little tuber that it grows underneath are sometimes called fairy spuds, and they are indeed little potato-like things which are very edible. And so that was an important food source for many Native American tribes, particularly in springtime when not a lot was up. These things would come in, advertise where they were, and you could eat them. But of course, if you do, you are killing the plant itself. You notice the leaves are very grass-like. If it only has one leaf, then it will not produce a flower that year. But if it has more than one leaf, then it produces flowers. So it stores up energy, and when it's got enough energy, it can finally reproduce. If these flowers are visited, and again, I told you, this is a favorite plant to be visited by all sorts of different kinds of pollinators, then a seed forms. The seeds, when they're ripe, finally explode, pop open, and spread the seeds a couple of feet away. Not only that, but they grow a certain kind of a protein packet on them called an elaiosome, which is very attractive to certain species of ants. So this is what's called a myrmecoccus plant, a plant that's spread by ants. The ants come in, find the seed based on what they think is a favorable food on the elaiosome, take the seed, throw away the actual seed itself, but eat the elaiosome, and in so doing they plant another Spring Beauty somewhere underground away from the parent plant, and that's how it spreads. So an absolutely beautiful plant. When there is enough of these things, they can just carpet an area. And again, these are one of my favorite of spring wildflowers, the Spring Beauties. In this case, this is the Virginia Spring Beauty, the species that we have here locally in the DC area. And again, I don't know if you can actually tell much about how beautiful that little flower is. Quite variable, but a beautiful little flower that's very rewarding to pollinators to visit it. Spring Beauties, here in springtime near our nation's capital.